Welcome back to Historical Context. Today we continue our series on Virginia during the Restoration. Today's episode takes us back to Virginia in 1677, where we discuss the fallout from the departure of Sir William Berkeley, and Sir William Berkeley, shortly after leaving, dies while in England. And we're going to start today's episode with a correction. In last week's episode, we thought that Governor Berkeley had willingly gone back to England in the spring of 1677. Since then, we've come across new information which we will lead off with today. In November 1676, King Charles II sent a commission for Colonel Herbert Jeffreys to become the colonial governor of Virginia. In that notice, the king refers to Sir William Berkeley being called back to England. In the commission, King Charles II says that Berkeley sought him to grant the leave. So Berkeley kind of requested it. King Charles called him back. That's how it happened. There was a bit of a caveat to the Jeffreys administration. Let's have a look at the writing. And our will and pleasure is that in case it shall happen, the said Sir William Berkeley shall depart this life yet. In such case we do hereby give full power and authority to the said Herbert Jeffreys to do, execute, and perform all the jurisdictions, powers, and authorities hereby to him given and granted until such time as we shall declare our royal pleasure, and shall appoint who shall succeed in the execution of the office of governor. So Jeffreys is interim. He is interim. And it seems from reading the commission that he was to serve more as a military leader to keep the rebellion quelled. The king did give Jeffreys the authority to issue court martials, so more of a military commander than anything else in Virginia. It's unknown as to why Governor Berkeley waited until April to leave. It could have been the weather, or it could have been the desire to seek revenge through the court martials he had from January through March against the former rebels. So as Berkeley is leaving, he is court-martialing and executing rebels and seizing their estates as well. And so I think that it could be any number of things. Weather is a popular one considering he left in April, but these court-martials may be another reason. Berkeley left Virginia on April 27, 1677, and Jeffreys wasted no time. He issued a declaration that day. Colonel Jeffreys stated that if anyone degrades or lessens his power, they will face degradation themselves. He adds that he will be inquiring and removing disaffected persons in government and in the churches. He feels he is doing this to avoid future rebellion. Colonel Jeffreys concludes his declaration by stating that he will make peace with those natives who have not given the colony any trouble, and he will make war with those who have. Governor Berkeley, apparently having read the declaration, wrote to Jeffreys and pointed out misstatements in the declaration. So Berkeley is either on the ship back to England or is in England when he gets this information. He added that Jeffreys was unacquainted with the laws, customs, and nature of the people. So Berkeley right away is not crazy about Colonel Jeffreys. In England, the Council of Foreign Plantations sent orders to Virginia that no orders regarding revenue should be made without the knowledge of King Charles II. On May 13th, King Charles II orders Governor Jeffreys to reduce the standing army to 100, considering the rebellion now had ended. By mid-May, the king had become upset that Berkeley had yet to return and sent several letters ordering Berkeley to return and communicating his disappointment. Let's have a look at the writing. The king has very little hopes that the people of Virginia shall be brought to a right sense of their duty to obey their governors, when the governors themselves will not obey the king. Prays that he will redeem as much as he can by a ready compliance with his present order. Now, little does King Charles know, and fortunately for Governor Berkeley, he is already en route to England. During the month of May, several petitions come into England from Virginia. Most of them are either former rebels asking for forgiveness or prisoners claiming unfair treatment by a gentleman by the name of William Hartwell. In one case, William Sherwood pled for the crown to do something about debts owed to him by rebels who had since been executed. Other petitions came in for people who were pressed into service by Bacon and forced to hand over their goods. They wanted compensation. In the summer of 1677, it was discovered that Virginia issued bills of exchange to counterparties in order to get trade moving 2 and 3 years prior. These bills were now deemed worthless, and the monarchy had to figure out what to do. They would ultimately order Thomas Ludwell to pay out any claims. In July 1677, the English government also approved the burial of dead in Virginia on their homesteads, as public cemeteries were in short supply. Also that month, William Berkeley dies in England, and by royal order upon the death of Sir William Berkeley, Thomas Culpeper is named the new governor of Virginia. He is referred to there in England as Lord Culpeper. Lord Culpeper was different in that he was living in England when the appointment came, and he made no immediate plans to leave for Virginia, so he was going to govern from abroad. This was despite King Charles requesting he leave by Christmas. On August 21st, King Charles issues a proclamation providing a blanket pardon of all participants in Bacon's rebellion and offers restitution to anyone whose estates were seized by Governor Berkeley during his martial courts in the first quarter of the year. So, King Charles II really extending an olive branch here to four more rebels. The Committee on Foreign Plantations also considers overturning a Virginia law which states that rebels could no longer hold public office. The king had good reason to want Lord Culpeper in Virginia. Petitions are still coming in. One petition was from Sarah Drummond, widow of executed rebel William Drummond, who accused Governor Berkeley of dividing her husband's estate amongst himself and his council. This set off a long trail of correspondence. In October, the Grand Assembly met in Virginia, and let's have a look at what they led off with. Whereas several persons concerned in the late horrid rebellion do for fear punishment abide and lie out in the woods on the south side of James River, and Colonel Joseph Bridger proposing that it was convenient that some court be taken for the bringing of them in, it is therefore hereby ordered that all such persons as lie out as aforesaid that will come in to some of his Majesty's justice of the peace and take the oath of obedience and give security for their well-being within 20 days after the publication hereof, shall have the full benefit of the king's gracious proclamation of pardon. So an olive branch extended by the Virginia Assembly. Now, if these outliers do not come in willingly, the Assembly placed a bounty of 5,000 pounds tobacco on their heads, dead or alive. A group of men from Surry County filed grievances against the justices in their county. which the assembly responded to by fining the justices 400 pounds tobacco, but the offenses were not detailed. They were just described as being scandalous and injurious. So Virginia is attempting to handle some of its own grievances here. Now, a statement was read from Charles City County that was considered by the burgesses to be highly scandalous and injurious in nature. The burgesses ordered that the writer be identified and brought to the assembly for punishment. So a lot of back and forth things going on. You got one complaint that leads to fines of public officials. You got another complaint which leads to, I don't know if you want to call it a manhunt for the writer, but clearly they want to find who did that. A land dispute arose between colonists and the Queen of the Pamunkey, to which the assembly requested any colonists to bring their claims to the next assembly and to not further bother the Queen. And this was somebody who was loyal to Virginia, loyal to the colonists, who really suffered a huge attack at the hands of Nathaniel Bacon during the rebellion. The assembly agrees to fund the bills of exchange with new bills of exchange unless the king determines them void. The accumulated grievances of the colony, which we talked about in the previous episode, those were those whole lists of grievances that led to basically the end of Governor Berkeley, were published in October. Later that month, the Council of Foreign Plantations debated the treaty that Colonel Jeffreys made with the natives. They debated whether the 3-mile buffer was sufficient, and a colonel by the name of Morrison comments that the colony may have better security if the towns are in a smaller compass. We've been talking about this on and off since the Jamestown Massacre of 1622, and here we are 55 years later still debating how the towns of the colony should be laid out in relation to one another. The king requests that the Council of Virginia make Sarah Drummond, the widow of the late rebel, whole. Later, the order was detailed to authorize the return of seized personal property that had remained unsold and bills of exchange to make up the difference. So basically, this was later on because it was kind of a stall there in terms of them actually following through, probably because they had already liquidated some of what they had received. So the king says, anything you have that did belong to the Drummonds, you need to return it, and then bills of exchange need to be issued to make up the difference. I'm beginning to think that these bills of exchange, which are essentially designed separately from the tobacco, are really designed to memorialize or monetize debt, and it's becoming sort of like the first fiat currency of the colonies. In November, England hears the petition of Henry West on behalf of himself and his brother William. West claims that his brother came out of the woods to pledge allegiance, per the pardon offered by the colonists, only to find himself under arrest and sentenced to death for the rebellion. William ended up escaping from prison, and Henry hoped that England would grant his brother's pardon, who he stated was ready to take an oath of allegiance. In December, the commissioners provide their report to the Committee of Trade and Plantations. These were commissioners sent over by England to investigate the rebellion. Lord Culpeper, this is in England, is present at this meeting. The commissioners state that they never intended to diminish the late Governor Berkeley. And from this meeting, it is moved that instructions be given to Lord Culpeper on how to direct his administration. The committee found that Berkeley mishandled his dealings with Nathaniel Bacon, which perpetuated the rebellion. They also felt that a surgical response to native attacks would have gone far better in subduing mutiny and would have increased security. Since Governor Berkeley never provided a written account of his side, the committee approved the commissioner's report. And of course, Governor Berkeley was now deceased. In late 1677, a bevy of petitions flood England from people claiming to have lost estates due to the rebellion. One was from none other than William Claiborne, who stated he suffered loss from the seizure of Kent Island. That was nearly 50 years prior and was covered on this podcast. On January 18th, 1678, King Charles issues an order to Virginia that all former rebels are to be pardoned and estates restored. This is likely in response to the various petitions coming in, alleging the colonial government was not acting quickly enough to restore former rebels. The West brothers officially received the king's pardon in February. Later in February, Colonel Morrison writes that as soon as the standing army is dissolved, which is what England is leading towards doing, Colonel Morrison says that the rebellion will resume once again. So what will Lord Culpeper do, and how will this all play out? We'll find out more next time on Historical Context.